Do you struggle to deploy applications in your enterprise environment or even in your SMB business? If you do, today I've got the video for you. So today we're going to explore something which up until about a year ago I'd never heard of before. And then lots of customers started telling me that they were using it. So today we're going to go through something called the PS App Deploy Toolkit. So the PS App Deploy Toolkit is a framework for installing applications. And the beautiful thing about it is we can use it to install applications via Intune, SCCM, Nerdio ShellApps, any deployment choice that you have, even like stuff like Azure DevOps. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to explain to you what it is, how it works, and then what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll deploy a simple application, and then I'll show you how you can integrate it with Intune and also within Nerdio ShellApps as well, and even like Azure DevOps. So if you do struggle with applications, then please keep on watching, because this is an amazing tool and I can't wait for you guys to see it. Let's get started. Alright, as I mentioned, I'd never actually heard of this tool up until about a year ago, and lots of customers were mentioning it to me. I was like, what is this thing? I started looking into it, and what the PS App Deploy Toolkit is essentially a framework for deploying applications. And why does that matter? So it matters because I can then use that framework against multiple deployment options. So I can use it against Intune, SCCM, whatever method, right? So just to prove, I asked a question on LinkedIn, okay, who's actually using the PS App Deploy Toolkit? And I had 85 people respond, and 64% saying yes, they're using it. You can imagine there must be hundreds of thousands of IT professionals out there. A lot of people are using the PS App Deploy Toolkit. So today I'm going to show you how it fixes a common problem that I come across pretty much every week. Like, customers don't want to manage multiple application repositories, right? They want to deploy applications from Intune, they want to deploy applications from SCCM, they want to deploy applications via DevOps, via Nerdio, but they don't want to handle multiple different ways of deploying applications. So the PS App Deploy Toolkit is a method of standardizing that deployment method, right? I can use the same files across all those different platforms, and that's what makes it so amazing, because it just makes things a lot simpler and easier to deploy applications. When I'm working with my packages, I just need to have one standardization, right? And then I don't care if it's Intune, I don't care if it's SCM, I don't care if it's Nerdio. I'm able to deploy that application in exactly the same way, and that's what we're going to go through today. All right, so I guess the first starting point that you should look at is actually the website. They've got very good documentation on there, so if you go and look at this actually the website that they have there. They've got some really good upgrade guidance. So probably a big caveat for this is we've just gone from version 3 to version 4, and also version 4.1 as well. So I'm using the latest and greatest, so be aware that if you are using version 3, the commands have changed slightly, right? Because this is all driven by PowerShell, right? So let's first of all start with the basics, right? So what actually is this PS App Deploy Toolkit? So essentially it's just a framework of applications, right? So what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll have a look at the file structure, and then I'll show you how to download it, and then we're going to install a sample application via it, and then I'll show you how you can then dump that out via potentially Intune or Nerdio ShellApps as well. Alright, so let's now go and look at the structure and see what this actually is. Okay, so I'm on a clean virtual machine that I deployed. What I've actually done, I've gone ahead and downloaded the PS App Deploy Toolkit. So if you can download that via GitHub, so let me show you how to do that now. So if we just go to Google, that's all that rubbish, so, and just type in PS App Deploy Toolkit, okay. You just go onto the website here, and then basically this is the actual website, but if you want to download it, we actually need to go onto GitHub, okay. So if I go to version 4.1, which is the latest one, right? So in here I think we should have somewhere, yep. So if you go to download, okay, and you can see here these are the files which you download. So you can go to here, so go to GitHub, and this is the latest version 4.1.7, and basically we can just click on that, and then from there we've got these files only. I use the template toolkit because you'll need that to deploy the original file, so you just basically click on that, okay, and that downloads that file, and then in there it gives you this, right? So this is essentially the framework that you get, right? I'll show you one that I've already done, but you basically just extract that on a per application basis, okay. So you have a copy of that per application. It's only 8 megs, so it's very small. Right, what we've got is basically we've got this invoke application deploy invoke app deploy toolkit.exe, and that is basically what you use to call it, right? And that basically just calls this PowerShell script as well. Now, all this remains the same. The only thing that you need to add in is your files, right? So you can go into here. If you go to files, and you can see here, it's got add setup files here. So I've added in this Notepad++, okay? I know, not very original, but hey. So that's where your installer goes within there, okay? And then what you can then do, you can apply like configurations. So if you want to change like default settings and stuff, I can come into here and then just change, okay, what's the banner? We'll show you that in a second. And then you can select like default parameters that you want to use as well. So you can see here like the logging time and the file output and that kind of stuff as well. So it's all about standardization, right? Rather than having you to specify stuff within your install commands or whatever, we can just standardize pretty much everything that we need to do here, like timeouts and exit codes and languages and all that stuff. It's very, very cool. I'm not going to go into lots of depth with this during this. Maybe we'll do a future video on that, but if you want to set the defaults, this is where you would change those as well. Okay, and then basically what you then do is, so you've got your install files, so you put your install files in there, so you can have your MSI files, your exes, your MFTs, your whatever you want, whatever you're calling in there as well. So these files you don't touch, okay? So this is the actual code which kind of runs, and then you can have like extensions and stuff. But yeah, the only thing you need to worry about is this files directory, and obviously support files in there. So registry settings and anything else that you need to within there as well. Okay, so what we then do is we add our install commands that we need to add into there as well. So if I go into the invoke app deploy toolkit script, okay, I'm going to open that. So what you can do, there's a couple of parameters that you can configure. So for example, you want to do terminal server mode, you can like suppress messages, disable logging, that kind of thing as well. Okay, the most important thing is actually the stuff that you set within here as well. Right, so these are your variables. So if you want to use variables in your scripts, you can set them here, so you can see like vendor, application name, version, revision, whatever. Okay, you can set install name and install titles. I've just let those as default. And this is the script which actually kicks off the process. So this is the install ADT deployment. Now the bit which you need to worry about is here. Okay, so perform pre-installation tasks. So if you need to, I don't know, do any checking, if you need to check the disk space size or memory usage or processor type or something, we can add stuff in here as well. But for the installation, this is where we add our install command. So the only change that I've made is this here. That's the only thing which I've added. Okay, we got start ADT process. So from there, I've just basically specified this $ADT session.dir files. So that's going to be this directory. So let me just hover over into there. So this is going to be this directory here. Okay, so when we say dir files, that's the directory that we're going to call in there. Okay, and then that will basically just kick off that install command, and I got on a /s for a silent install. Okay, so you can call that, and then that is all I've done. So if you need to do like install commands, you can add those within there as well. And then yeah, post installation tasks, you've got any post on installation tasks there or post install tasks, you can add those within there as well. Okay, so there is a load of like commands and stuff that you can do, so I'll take you through that shortly. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So as you can see, there's a lot of automation involved, and it looks complicated, but it's quite simple under the hood. But as you mentioned, the beautiful thing is I can take this and then I can package that up, right? I can then deploy this via Intune, I can deploy it via Nerdio, I can deploy it via SCCM, I can deploy it however I want. The only thing I need to do is to kick off that install script, right? So let me show you that now. So this is a framework, right? So we've got our framework, okay? Now, all we have to do is go into PowerShell, and then I just basically just go into the PS test directory. So if you have a look in here, and then I literally just need to do this, invoke application toolkit.exe, and what that's going to do, that's automatically going to read the files on the PowerShell command and then just kick off the install, right? So you can imagine you can just replicate this, right, very easily. So let's go and do that now. Just click that. Okay, so what we're going to see now, it will pop up in a second. There you go. So you can also customize this as well, by the way. So you can add in your own messages as well if you're doing interactive installs. So I'm just going to go and click install. And that's going ahead, and that's actually doing the install. I know you probably can't see it because I'm in the way here, I just realized that. But yeah, you can customize the text, that's on there as well. So I'm just click OK. So you didn't see anything because I selected silent install mode, but let's actually go ahead and just take a look and see if I actually did install the application. So if I go to here and then go to Notepad and see if we can actually run it, and there we go, we have Notepad+, that's been installed successfully. So as you can see, that was like dead easy, right? So now we'll just go and have a look at log files. So I'll show you where the log file location is, okay? And then we'll have a look through those so you can use that for troubleshooting purposes if you need to as well. So one thing which I recommend, just while you get into grips with it, just so you can see what's happening under the hood, is you can actually, when you're testing this, you can actually call the PowerShell script directly, so you can actually see what's happening under the hood. So let's go and do that now, just so you can see, then I'll explain some stuff. Right, so I'm basically just going to run that PowerShell command instead of doing the exe, right? So just click that. And then what that will do, you can see there is how it's doing all the output for me. You can see here what it's reading, so it's showing you what the module version is, it's showing you what the config path is, it's showing you what the computer name is. So this is why this is really good for troubleshooting, so you can see what's happening under the hood. So it's retrieving, evaluating disk space, retrieving disk space requirements, that kind of stuff. And then we just go and click on install, and that will go away and then do the install, and you can see there that we're getting all the output from there as well. Okay, so execution complete successfully with exit code 0. So that's what we want to see. Okay, but yep, there you go, and then click OK for that, and then that's it. We are done. So yeah, that's my top tip for this video. If you're ever struggling to see what's actually happening under the hood, just launch this in PowerShell mode, and then you'll be able to see what it's doing and then troubleshoot it from there as well. Okay, all right, as promised, let's go and look at the log file. All right, as I mentioned, we're basically outputting everything into C, Windows, logs, and software. Okay, so you can see that here I've got this log file. So you just open it up and then basically see all the output that it's got in there. So if you ever want to do any kind of troubleshooting as well, you can just have a look in here and see what's actually happening under the hood as well. Definitely a top tip there as well. Okay, if you want to change the location of the log files, basically everything for that is covered in these variable settings. So if I go to, let's see, where is it there, see config, and then have a look at this config file, and basically in here you can see the location. So that's where I knew where to look for that log file. So it's in there, Windows log software. So if you want to, I don't know, maybe put it to a network location, or if you've got a custom directory and that you use for standard log files, you could change that in there as well. We've got some other settings in there that you can change in there as well. So you want to change the default settings, and that's definitely where you go to look. Okay, all right, so what we've done so far is obviously we've looked at the framework that you've got for it, and we've also deployed an application by it. That's all working fine. So once I've done that, once I've tested that, where can I go from here now? The next step, I think what we'll do is we'll try publishing one of these applications into Intune. I'll show you how to do that, and then we'll also do the same thing with Nerdio ShellApps as well, right? And then we'll deploy an application from Intune and also from Nerdio ShellApps, just to show you the differences and what's actually happening under the hood, and then you'll just see how easy it is to compare the two. So let's go and do that now. Right, so the first thing we need to do is to wrap it for the Intune win file. I've basically just that. So the source folder is going to be the PSDAT, right? So imagine you've got one of these for each application. Okay, so let's do that. C PS test. Okay, let's make sure it's case sensitive. C PS test, and the setup file is going to be this one here. So basically we're just going to run this. Okay, exe. Okay, and the output folder is going to be CPS test, for example. Cancel folder, nope. Okay, so that's going to go ahead and it's going to create that Intune win file for me. So there you go. So that's actually created. So now we can go ahead and then upload that into Intune. All right, so I'm in the Intune portal, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and create the Intune package. So click create. I'm going to select a Win32 app, okay, and then we're going to select the file that we just created. All right, so select this file. So go to C, PS tests. There's my Intune Win file. Okay, I'm going to select that. Okay, so this is the name, so I'm going to call this the name of the package, which is going to be Notepad++. Okay, so description, my PS App Deploy Notepad++. Okay, publisher, so I'm just going to set that to me, Notepad, whatever. Version, I'm not going to bother with a version. In fact, yeah, I'll just do 1.0.0. Feature app, no. Valid URL, okay. Next. So the install command. So this is the install command that we use to actually kick off the installation. So you can see there, we'll do basically just what we did there. That's basically just going to be what we did before. That's going to be invoke PS App Deploy Toolkit exe. Okay. So literally just that on its own. So the uninstall command is basically just going to be the same, but just with a /uninstall at the end. Okay. Installation time required 60 minutes. Yeah, we'll leave that default. System, yeah, that's fine. Okay, we're going to do return code 0, which is fine. Requirements. So nope, we don't want to do any of that. Minimum operating system. So we're going to select. Yes, in fact, let's do Windows 11 22H2. Okay, going to do next detection rules. So manually configure them. So going to add rule type and then be file and then path. So let's check what the path is going to be. So that would be C program files Notepad++. Okay, so we'll use that. So that's that. Folder contain a folder to detect, file or folder to detect. So let's have a look and see what we can detect there. We'll do that. Okay, ++. exe. Okay, detection method. File or folder exists. Okay. So that's our detection method configured. So we know that if that file or folder exists, then we're good there. Obviously, this is a very simple scenario. You may have different versions like detection methods about versioning and file hashes and stuff. Okay. Dependencies, we don't have any dependencies. We don't have any supersedence. Assignments, I'm probably going to change this later and then we'll test this. Okay. So I'm just going to select next for now, and then we're going to click on create. Okay, so that's basically that's created my Intune package for me. So that's going to upload that, and then once that's ready, we'll push it onto a device, and then we'll see how long that takes to install. And then I'll show you how to do exactly the same thing via Nerdio as well, just to show you the differences between the two and how this all works together. All right, back shortly. All right, so I've got a group that this session host that we're going to test with is a member of. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and deploy that application to that group. Okay, I am in the application screen. So go to Windows and Notepad++. Then basically we're going to assign the application to that group. Okay, so if I go to assignments, click edit, and then add group, and then search for app attach. Okay, so I'm going to select that there, and then I'm going to select OK, and then review and save. Okay, so we're going to set that to required. App attach, yep, okay, click save. Okay, so that now it's done. So basically now we're going to go into Nerdio, fire up the session host, and then we'll wait and see how long that takes to deploy the application onto the session host. So I'll be back shortly once that's done, and then say we'll go and do the exact same thing within Nerdio. Just compare the time it takes to deploy the two as well. All right, back shortly. All right, so you can see I've powered up the session host, and it's currently saying the device checking time was like last week, but we'll give it a few minutes and then hopefully that'll update. And then if you have a look, if you go to the actual session host itself, and then click on Manage Apps. We can see there it's basically saying required install and waiting for install status. Yeah, hopefully within, I don't know, an hour, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, who knows, we'll have that application deployed and fire, and I'll be back shortly. Alright, so just logged onto the session host, and as you can see here, it started doing its stuff. So obviously, normal environment, we wouldn't want to see this, so I'm just going to click install, then it'll hopefully go ahead and install it. But what you can actually do as well, you can actually suppress that, so we don't obviously normally want to see it. So if I'm installing stuff on a multi-session host, for example, I don't want users seeing that. I just want it to go ahead and do the install. So that's obviously gone ahead now. We can see there now we've now got Notepad+ running successfully on that session host. So that's how we deploy it via Intune. And what I'll do now is I'll just show you how to suppress that setting as well. Okay, so back in a second. So this is the setting here which I'll tell you about. So you can actually do deploy mode set by auto, but what we want to set this to silent, right? So to do that, basically all we have to do is go into the Intune portal, and then we just set this deploy mode at the end and just configure that to silent. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that now. So if you want to do a silent install, as in it forces the install, we can just add it on there. So you can see here, I've got invoke App Deploy Toolkit, -install, and then -deploy mode, and then just put that to silent. Okay, and that will basically force the install rather than having to wait for a user to prompt that. Okay, which is definitely what you'd want in a multi-session environment. So that's how we do it via Intune. So if I just go over there, you should be able to see it deployed. So you can see now we have that, and that's set to install. So timing wasn't too bad. It just took about, I don't know, 5 minutes to deploy that. So now let me show you how you do it via Nerdio, right? Because it's the most easy way of doing it via Nerdio. I'll show you how to do that now. Alright, so now that we've done it via Intune, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with Nerdio, just to show you how the framework operates. Okay, so I'm going to head over to my other screen now. So the first thing that we need to do for Nerdio, because we're going to do it via ShellApp, is actually zip it up. So we're going to go into here, and then basically to zip this up. So I'm going to go to compress2, and then send it to a zip file. Okay, so I'm going to call that Notepad+. Example. Okay, so that's just in fact, no, because that'll fail because it's a folder level. So it needs to be like top level. Okay, so just gonna go back here, PS test, and then basically create it like this. Okay, so compress2 zip file. I'm gonna call this Notepad++. That's it. Okay, alright, so that's our zip file, and we're going to use that to basically upload that into a Nerdio ShellApp. So I'm just going to go into here. So general, we're going to name, so Notepad++, and then I'm going to call that PS App Test. Description, publishing me, public on. Detection, so we need a detection script. So I'm just going to copy and paste the detection script in there now. Okay, so this is the detection script which is going to check for the directory, see program files notepad, and then just make sure that's there as well. Again, you can use register entries, file versions, hashes, whatever you want for that. We're then going to do the install commands, right? So the install command, this is exactly the same as we had via Intune. So the command that we use for the install is invoke App Deploy Toolkit exe, install, and then deployment mode silent, right? So that stops the user from having to prompt for anything. Okay, and then we're going to do the uninstall. So again, we just take that off there and then just type in uninstall. So that's all we need to do for there, and then versioning, we'll just keep that as version 1. Okay, now what we now need to do is for the file, right? So this is where the magic comes in. So basically what we can do here, if I select unzip, click file, and then basically I need to upload the file that we've already created. Okay, so if I go to this part of deploy and select that zip file, and that's basically going to unzip all the files automatically for me onto that session host. Okay, so just click start upload, and that's basically going to upload the file onto a storage account for me. So similar to what they do in the Intune win file format, right? For the Intune win file, you're uploading it into the Microsoft repo. What we're doing here is we're adding it into a storage account and it's sitting inside your network. It can be a bit quicker to create. So we're going to click create button. Okay, so that's basically created the application for me. As you can see here, we've got Notepad plus PS App test, right? Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to actually go ahead and create a deployment policy for that shell app. So we're going to deploy this via Nerdio Unified Application Manager, right? So I'm just going to go to deployment policies, click add. We're going to create a name for this. So call it Notepad plus PS App. I'm going to untick show favorites only. We're going to install app, and then we're just going to search through ShellApps. So ShellApps is what is hosted internally in our environment. Okay, and then we're going to search for Notepad plus. Okay, so we're going to select version 1.0 PS App test. So that's the one that we did. We're going to publish it to a personal AVD host pool as a test, and then we're going to push it to a single session host pool, for example. Okay, and then I'm going to click save. So basically that's created this deployment policy. So if I go into here, I can now see I've got this deployment policy, which is basically go ahead and check that host pool, and it will install the application on there as well. So let's go and do that now and see how long that takes. Okay, I'm logged onto the AVD session now, so that deployment went successfully, and we can see here we now have Notepad++ installed also onto the AVD desktop using Nerdio ShellApps as well. Okay, so that's the end of the video. I just wanted to show you that a bit at the end, showing how you do that via Intune, and also how you would do that via Nerdio ShellApps, just to show you that the way you install the software is exactly the same. So if you have a central software repository which is full of PS App Deploy files, PS App Deploy Toolkit files, it means that I can use whatever method makes sense for me to deploy those applications, whether that's Azure DevOps, whether that's Nerdio Unified Application Manager ShellApps, whether that's Intune, whether that's Config Manager, whatever method deployment that you choose. Having that framework gives you the ability to not have to have multiple software repositories, right? Because we can just have that one central repo, and which is controlled by the PS App Deploy Toolkit, or that's where the framework sits. So yeah, I hope you found this useful, and I hope I've enlightened you to how powerful the PS App Deploy Toolkit can be. As I say, a year ago I'd never heard of it, and then so many customers have told me they've been using it when I've been probing them, like, when you move into Intune, how are you doing your app deployments? And they all tell me, like, yeah, okay, what we're using this. So I've had a lot of success with customers deploying this via Nerdio, because they find Intune sometimes a bit slow and unreliable, whereas if we do it via Nerdio ShellApps, it is a lot quicker to deploy those apps. And yeah, that's it from this week. Please click the like and subscribe button if you found this useful. I do videos like this every week. So yeah, I will see you next week. Bye bye.